Welcome, travelers. We're aware that your journey was difficult, but prepare to have your questions answered, for you have been granted an audience with the Masters of Modern.
Breaking. We have a Pro Tour. We're talking about that. We're in different clothes because we're recording this right after the Pro Tour, but recorded the rest of this episode last week as an ongoing part of our set review. So we're interrupting this planned program to talk to you about what happened at the Mythic Championship this last weekend in London.
The future.
Or the past?
I don't know. That makes me want to talk about things that I shouldn't talk about
This
right
is the
now.
present. This weekend was packed.
It was packed.
There's a lot going on this weekend. We got Avengers Endgame. Won't talk spoilers there because Marshall, our producer, is way behind on the MCU. We got Game of Thrones, which we won't talk about because Ben Bateman is way behind on Game of Thrones.
A year and a half behind.
And then we have War of the Spark, which we won't spoil because you guys are all reading the book still. And I don't want to do that to you because you actually care about that since this is a Magic podcast. So I can't talk about anything with anyone. The Mythic Championship, though, was awesome. Look at all of, I'm really glad Wizards listened and they banned Faithless Looting. Wasn't in the format. Would have been way too oppressive. This format was definitely not equipped to be able to handle it. Oh wait,
Alex, Faithless Looting has not been banned in Modern yet.
Then why did no Faithless Looting decks only one? Oh, there's only one in the top 8. That's weird.
Yeah, definitely looking at this top 8 and watching some of the coverage here, it was really fascinating because the most played cards were all pretty much one CMC instance or sorceries and commons at that.
So on that sentence, because the whole of Twitter was like, oh, look, all one CMC, the most played cards. That's been true of, we pay attention to the top 10 most played cards using MTG Goldfish on basically for the last 4 years consistently. The top 7 most played cards in Modern have been one drop instants and sorceries between Lightning Bolt, Inquisition Kozilek, Thoughtseize, Faithless Looting, Ancient Stirrings, Noble Hierarch. It's just, that's Modern.
Yeah,
that has not changed with this format.
No.
We just have, I guess, the Graveyard Hate one now. So we have Surgical Extraction has been added to that group of guys and gals.
And that's a pretty specific, format-y card because of exactly where the format's at right now. But, I think the reason is, in any strategy game where you have a limited number of resources, you're finding ways to either churn through those resources faster to get to exactly what you want, or finding ways to interact so that you can then naturally draw into the things that you need. But one way or the other, that's why things that cost 1 are so important and in power formats. And I would go a step further and say, in Legacy and in Vintage, you're playing things that cost 1 and things that cost nothing or other resources to get there, which makes it go even faster. Modern is sort of exactly at the pivot point where you're getting the most value for 1, and there are the most things at 1 that make the format work. So the format was the Mythic Championship, as we're calling it, was won by...
As it's called.
Well,
Mythic Championship 2.
Mythic Championship 2 was won by Eli Loveman playing humans.
It's a good name.
Yeah, he played Sperling, friend of the show, Matt Sperling, in the finals. Yep. Sperling was playing Classic Affinity with 2 copies of Experimental Frenzy, which is
That's really cool.
Yeah, I've played against that before, actually. Yep. And it's definitely it makes that deck turbo in a way that Old School Affinity was good, but hasn't shown up as much recently. Mm-hmm. Experimental Frenzy is freaking turbo, and I can't remember the text on the card in front of me, but I'm sure it's going to be on the screen here. But it's effectively a 4-mana red enchantment that allows you to play cards off the top of your library, and because so many of the things in Affinity cost 0, you're able to just go totally bonkers and nuts.
And even with Affinity in a deck, a lot of lands you want. Even when you get, kind of the problem with Experimental Frenzy and Standard is if you get stalled out on a bunch of lands on top, they're just basics or dual lands. In Affinity, half of their lands are mana creatures. The other half are artifacts. You're getting a lot of value even from just getting a couple lands on top of your deck.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the finals. Rounding out the rest of the top 8, you have Alexander Hayne playing Green Tron. You have Adrian Zhu, ZHU, not like ZOO, playing Tron with Thragtusk and a World Breaker in the deck. That's pretty sweet. Tien Nguyen playing... Wait, how do you pronounce the name?
Win.
There you go, okay. Tien Nguyen playing Titan Shift with 3 Mulvani Acid Moss and a Chandra Torch of Defiance in the main. 3 Acid Moss in the main?
That's been a thing recently. in Ponza decks, and it's cool seeing it in Tron.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Acid Moss. Brian Brondoon playing humans. He was playing no copies of Deputy Detention, but most of the decks were playing Deputy, though the 2 other copies in the top 8 didn't have any. Chris Kvartek playing humans. He had one of the green, white, black Anafens. I think it's Anafens of the Foremost. Also no deputies. And then Javier Dominguez playing the only copy of a deck with Faithless Looting in the top 8. Is it Phoenix?
Now, Is It Phoenix was the second most present deck in the format. It had a 52% win rate for the event, or 52.7, with humans being third, Tron being number 1, and then it goes all the way down. And, obviously Affinities did really well. Humans and Tron being the best performers, I think, in general in this top 8. Obviously, humans has the problem that just like humans are always going to be printed. I think the big takeaway for me, and we're not even getting into all of this stuff that, is that Tron, especially with the new Mulligan rule, if it becomes effective, a thing that happens is problematic. And Tron was one of the best decks in this Mythic Championship without the new cards being added. And it's getting at least 2, if not 3, extremely powerful additions outside of War of the Spark.
In our previous set review, Karn being probably the biggest.
Or this one. I think that was in the second episode, which we recorded. There's like time issues, but I think that's in this episode. We will talk about Karn, and we will talk about the statue.
The
God-pharaoh statue or whatever.
So that was the top 8. The only deck to crack 60% win rate at this event was Ad Nauseam, which is interesting, at 61%. That's a pretty bold
part of that is
statistic.
Like it's easier to hit something that hard when you're only 8 decks versus so many of them. I think it has a really good matchup against Tron and humans, and is it Phoenix?
Yeah, that's true.
And deck's good.
Yeah. The other stuff, Frank Carson wrote an article on the Mothership talking about some of the most interesting decks that did well. Mark Jacobson playing a red Eldrazi deck. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
This deck is interesting, playing 4 Serum Powder and some Chalices in the main. But the other cool list here listed was the Vanifar Pod deck that went 6-4, playing by Amand Dosimont. Sweet name, Amand Dosimont. It's a great name.
That's a deck list that I think is going to get better and better. It's, Pod took 2 years before everyone kind of got good enough with it that it became the best deck in the format, and I can imagine Vanifar decks having a similar trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, Vanifar is interesting, right? It's 4 mana, sorcery speed, so it's a little slower than Pod. It's obviously not colorless, so there's that, but it is still really powerful. I mean, and it's interesting, right? The Kiki Jiki Splinter Twin decks never really caught on after they banned Splinter Twin. Almost, and people tried, and it would be fringe, but it never quite got there. And right now, Vanifar looks like it's kind of filling the same role, which is like the fringe version of the old powerful deck, though I have more faith in Vanifar's ability to conquer that than I ever did with Kiki Jiki.
Well, and once you add the finale, the new green finale, which I think we'll be talking about, or we talked about last week. Started this week. We'll talk about it today. We'll talk about the finales later today, and the green one definitely adds another tool. I don't think we talked about Vanifar when we talked about it, as a whole other tool to that deck. Super excited. One other thing is, so the reaction so far from the people that played in the event were pretty off of the Mulligan rule, which is interesting. Now,
off as in they did not like it.
They did not like it. Yeah. I don't know. Overall, obviously, data is not everywhere, and that's just a few pretty outspoken people, and I can imagine Wizards not wanting to be different. One advice from one of those pros was that arena legal formats should use this Mulligan, but then this Mulligan should be the Vancouver Mulligan for Modern and other Eternal formats. Where do you sit on the new Mulligan rule?
I really want to go back, and tonight I'm actually planning on going and spending some time watching some of these matches, because I got to watch little bits and pieces, but
this weekend was really packed.
It was a packed weekend, and in general, I don't this is just a tangent, but you guys know me well because you listen to the show and watch the show. Content is the thing that I struggle with the absolute most in my life anymore.
Watching it.
Content that takes more than 5 or 10 minutes, if it's whether you're talking about playing in a Magic event, right? So if that's creating my own content, if you're talking about watching Magic coverage, if you're talking about watching sports, watching movies, watching TV, reading comic books, there's only so much time. Podcasts, I don't even listen anymore. I used to love podcasts. There are so many minutes in a day, and I don't find that I have the time anymore to in real time go do it. So tonight I'm going to go binge a bunch of the Mythic Championship because I really would like to watch those games. I can read about them. I can watch clips 5-10 minutes at a time, but I would like to see these matches. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Like I like the idea of the Mulligan rule, and I think it's cool for Modern. I'm gonna probably have a stronger opinion on next week's show when I actually have like binged a lot of these matches.
Sure.
How do you feel about it?
I think that a Mulligan rule that allows for gameplay to be more interesting more often and more fun and more games of Magic to happen is better, and that if there are decks that take advantage of the Mulligan rule in a way that make it problematic, but for in general it's better for games, then those decks are the problem, not the Mulligan rule.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, like, now that we have one competitive event's worth of information for players in real time to have taken those decks, played against each other at a high level at the next Mythic Championship, to now see how people have adapted. That'll be, I think, the real tell, is because, like, in this one, people were still going off theory crafting for the most part, what the field was going to be. And like now, Modern, a field with that rule has been implemented. So I think that will be.
Well, I think that's also interesting is unless they make this rule an actual rule, which they're going to try and do. If they don't in Modern, then this metagame doesn't matter. Like this top 8 isn't necessary. Like this is a top 8 meant to with this Mulligan rule and other changes. Plus, War of the Spark comes out. If I would say that if the Mulligan rule happens, I'm shot calling Expedition Map being banned within the next year. I think that Ancient Stirrings keeps too many decks working, and Wizards has basically made the statement every time a new ban list comes out. Like, we don't want to get rid of the glue that's holding a lot of decks together. We're willing to get rid of other individual cards to slow them down. And Expedition Map is a colorless source of like letting Eldrazi decks just kind of function in a way that maybe they shouldn't be able to.
I mean, Ironworks getting banned is a good example of them deciding, look, we don't want this deck to be in the format, so we're going to make it so this deck doesn't work in the format. Period. Like and we're not gonna ban the little cards that get you Ironworks. We're gonna take out Ironworks.
Right. And I don't know if they're gonna ban Tron outright. I don't think they'll like get rid of Tower, but I think getting rid of. Which, by the way, if they get rid of Tower, they should just get rid of all 3. Like, they got rid of all 3 artifact lands. Everyone's like, oh, just ban one of them. Just ban all of them. It's weird to only have one be banned. But Expedition Map, I think, is the real pick. It slows the deck down. It makes it so it can't be colorless. You have to go into green. I think it just is a better option. And makes it so that you can't have turn 3 Tron without naturally drawing it. Right now, you can get yourself there. And with all the new cards from War of the Spark. The other statement I want to make about the Pro Tour Mythic Championship before we get into the actual episode is, we get into our episodes from our outfits from last week, I really disliked it being on the same day as the pre-release. I think one of the things I was really unhappy about is we didn't get to see any of the new cards that I'm excited about trying to get War of the Spark cards into Modern, and we just got the most high profile type of tournament you can ever have, or second now because Mythic Invitationals exist, and none of those new cards were able to be played in it. On top of that, I already, ignoring the fact that there was also Game of Thrones and Avengers this weekend, on a pre-release weekend, I'm generally not available to pay attention to people live streaming a tournament. Yeah. I want to play in the event. That's why I want to go to a pre-release. And so layering those two things together made it feel like this is the least I've watched a Modern Pro Tour in the history of Modern existing.
Yeah, I found it to be pretty surprising. I definitely went and spent my pre-release, my hours, and was just sitting there thinking it's on in the other room. They're streaming it. I could be watching this right now, but I want to play. If I don't do this, I'm not going to get to pre-release. So.
Right. And I think me playing with cards at a pre-release is more valuable to me being a help you guys knowing how good cards or not good cards are going to be than necessarily watching a Pro Tour that doesn't involve any of the new cards.
Yeah. So speaking of which, and I just something to point out, you mentioned this really briefly, but I actually didn't realize and was confused because of Wizards' major push to make Magic an esport that the only $1 million tournaments are the invitationals. That the Mythic Championships are actually just Pro Tour still.
No, they're $250,000 tournaments, I thought.
Well, the first place winner at a Pro Tour got $50K, and the first place winner at this event got $50K. I know that. So I believe it's the same unless it goes deeper. Maybe they extended the money down further.
Maybe. Or maybe there's more. Is there more Mythic Championships this year? We'll figure that out. We'll have a conversation.
I believe so. I think there's supposed to be one a quarter.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's how many there used to be.
I was just surprised. It was all. I thought that they were all invitationals, and it's still exciting. There's an invitational, but I still think the idea that you would win a tournament now with the way Magic has built itself and win $50,000 is awesome, but it's a little bit deflating, I think, in terms of esports.
Right. And there's a lot of layers. I also think there's a little bit of a downbeat after the fact that this was the first tournament after the Mythic Invitational.
Yeah.
Where that was so well produced and so high profile, and everything about it was this big epic thing. And the next closest thing to a Mythic Invitational was this Pro Tour and Mythic Championship, and they didn't put the same dollars into promoting or the that kind of effort into it, and then so it kind of depreciated views. And like, I don't think that's fair. And hopefully they're not taking that to mean Modern is that. That's what I want to make sure Wizards, or hope Wizards doesn't do, is like, oh look, Modern's not popular, we won't do any Mythic Invitationals with it. It's no, due to like 7 different things that they decided to do this time, all of them felt like they pointed in a weird direction. That's the last thing. It's weird that they did a lot of different things. All of them were like experimental, and it kind of makes all of the data a little bit off. Like they got rid of the control by making it so decks list were public. I know that Nick Prince was going to play a different deck, and then they told him his deck list was going to be private. He was going to play a prison deck with chalices and get people with it. But now that you can't get people with cards anymore, he had to play humans. So like there's a bunch of stuff that went on that was weird.
Did they have an announced reason for why they made the
I don't know why they did it here. I wish they didn't. It's actually, I agree, and we should do a whole episode on deck lists being presented to opponents that I don't want to do now. We don't have time. But
does that work? You sat down, you got to see your opponent's deck at the beginning.
You didn't get to see quantities, but you got to see the cards.
Oh wow!
It's because they show them online on stream, and so now it gives people an advantage when you're not on live stream versus off. So it was a response to a real complaint. We're going to talk about this in another episode. I want to do a full episode on it. Thank you guys. Hope you guys enjoy the card set review, and we'll be doing part 2 today, and then part 3 next week, where you'll see us back in these outfits. I might take the sweater off because it's hot, so it'll be different views all around.
And let's get into it. What's up, guys? Masters of Modern here. I'm Ben Bateman.
I'm Alex Kessler.
And we've got a couple quick shout-outs for you guys that we wanted to remind you of on this episode. The first one is Twitter. At the MMCast, we've had a Twitter for years. It's a great place to interact with us. We post exclusive images of our brand new spoiler cards, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out at the MMCast. It is a great way to support the show. Cass, where can the folks find you personally?
I'm at Cass Wiley.
You guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media. The second thing is we have a YouTube. You may be watching this right now, honestly. You might be listening to it. But one of the big pushes for us in 2019 is to build this YouTube channel. We want to get more eyes, more ears, bigger guests, better episodes, higher production quality. We even hired a producer right now, so you might even see the camera angles changing. Subscribe, like, comment. It's going really well so far, and honestly, if you guys support it, even if you're an audio listener already, it's a huge thing you can do to help us grow this. The third thing, and maybe the most important thing for our long-term health, is patreon.com/theMMCast. Guys, this year is going to have a ton of cool rewards for you. We really want to make the Patreon feel special, and it's a great way to help us grow. Our ability to hire the producer, to get new gear, to do anything cool in the future is going to be dependent on our ability to actually pay for it.
Well, and the producer will help us kind of make sure we stay on stuff on Patreon, so it'll be a really thriving community.
Yeah. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is the Command Zone. Jimmy Wong, Josh Lee Kwai, these guys helped us start this thing. Mm-hmm. Collected.company is where you can find their stuff. They're seriously the most professional Magic people in the world, not named Ben and Alex.
Yeah, they make awesome content every week, Commander Focus. They do game nights. They do, the Command Zone is obviously the podcast, the sister podcast of the MMCast. Check them out, Collected.company. It's the same place you can find our episodes every week as well.
And the last thing is, if you guys want to check out a great community, check out the Facebook group, the Masters of Modern. There's a ton of people in there. It's very interactive. There are constantly threads about new decks, new conversations. It's very active. Check it out. That's Facebook, the official Masters of Modern group. And otherwise, let's get back to the show.
Yep. Thanks, guys. And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, with my co-host.
What's up, guys? We're back. It's part 2. It's the set review. There's a lot of cards to talk about. I don't want to belabor the point too much because we have so many sweet things to talk about.
Yep.
So, quick shout-outs. This is the Masters of Modern podcast. We talk about Modern. I'm Ben Bateman. You can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter.
I'm at Cass Wiley.
You can find him at Kess Wiley on Twitter.
Everywhere. Just everywhere.
At the MMCast also is our Twitter. This is a YouTube. You're probably watching or listening. Please like, subscribe, comment. We're not just saying that, guys. Honestly, you doing it is the thing that helps this channel, this podcast stay alive. It means the world. Check out the Command Zone. Jimmy and Josh do great content as well as game nights. An amazing, amazing show. We started our show with those guys. I mean, shortly thereafter, but...
First Masters of Modern episode, you could say, was on their podcast talking about...
Modern and
Helva.
Yeah.
The Commander.
Okay, I wasn't on that episode.
No, you weren't.
Or around for that.
No.
So we're doing part 2 of the set review today of War of the Spark. There's a billion cards to talk about. So we are recording this
Part 2 of this is being recorded before the Mythic Championship, so we don't have that information yet. I imagine Part 3 probably will be after, right?
I'm going to shot call and say that Amulet Titan won.
You're such a... Okay.
If I'm right, this looks great.
Stay tuned to the end of the episode. We are going to be announcing the Gaggle of Gideon's winner from our contest from our preview card a few weeks ago. The person that we have pulled from all of the many entries will be announced at the end of the episode. Should we just get straight into the episode?
Yep.
Anything else
Yeah.
important?
We're starting with the finale.
We're starting with the finale.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yep.
This card might be the best card in the whole set.
I think it is the best card in the whole set. We'll see. 2 mana is more than 1 mana. We'll find out. Finale of Devastation. X green, sorcery, mythic, rare. Search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X and gain haste until end of turn. Now, the first thing about this card, the first time I read it, I thought you get you can get a creature both from your graveyard and your library. It's just one or the other. It's not. It's you don't get 2 creatures off of this card ever.
Unless it's
you're not finding more than 1 creature card with this card. And obviously, this is harking back to Green Sun Zenith. It's 1 extra green. So I think one of the things that made Green Sun Zenith too good was the fact that it was a Land of War elf that became a best tutor in the format.
You mean because for 1 green you can get the card Dryad Arbor, which is a 0 mana creature because it's also a land. So for 1 green you could put a Lanor Elf into play, and that was people haven't seen that in Modern in a very long time. But when you say a Lanor Elf, that's what you mean. And yes, this is not as good in that sense, but it's a much better card in another sense.
Yeah, so the fact that it can get it from your graveyard is obviously super relevant. You can get cards that you want to get back from there. The fact that it can get any card and not just a green card, it's kind of interesting. The fact that because Green Sun Zenith was when it got banned, there was 2 issues, they said. One was that it made, it was too good, too late, and too good late and too good early, similar to kind of like Deathrite Shaman. Another reason that card is banned is because it's amazing turn 1 and amazing turn 10.
And another reason that Green Sun Zenith is banned is Deathrite Shaman, because it just got Deathrite Shaman.
Well, yeah. But it was banned before Deathrite Shaman was printed, wasn't it? Or at the same time. That was not... The other thing that they said was that it homogenized green decks. Because it could only find green creatures, it made it so those decks were... almost every green deck had to just play with the same 10 cards. And because this can play with... get any creature... you have a much larger library of cards that you can get, meaning that it actually makes the format less homogenized, at least for now. I mean, eventually we might find out we end up with a best version, kind of like Birthing Pod eventually got to the best version of Birthing Pod. But even then, there were, 3 different Birthing Pod decks? There were Kiki Birthing Pod decks. There were classic Malira combo decks. And then by the end of it, there was also just... junk mid-range decks that were just playing Rhino, and they weren't playing a combo. Then it was just a value engine, and you have all 3 of those options. This card seems like something similar.
This card is really good. It's really, really, really good.
We haven't even gone to the fact that if you just have infinite mana, you win with it. Like in Elves,
right?
This is just you find Crater Behemoth and you win.
It's interesting the way it slots into decks that are already competitive in Modern, because the infinite mana thing in decks in Modern that are creature decks, they actually want it to be a creature that wins, because you need Duskwatch Recruiter to be able to get a creature, because it can't get this card. So that's interesting.
Well, except that you would just play with 4 of this card instead of Duskwatch. The reason that's true is because they use it as a tutor, because you don't want more than 1 Duskwatch Recruiter. It's fine, but it's not the best. Where this, you play 4 of them, and you can just, if you have an infinite mana after playing the first 2, this is amazing.
I guess what I mean is there are a bunch of different ways that you can interact with searching your library and comboing and permanents and entering the battlefield that have to do with permanents and creatures. They don't interact that favorably with spells, because you don't flip a spell usually off those cards. You usually flip a permanent off those cards. So this card is really interesting in that sense, because it's going to go in... I think it's going to go in and replace copies of other tutors or collected company effects in those decks, right? I don't think you're going to play 9, 10, 11, and 12.
I think it replaces collected company.
Yeah, that's what I would think so too.
But maybe not. I mean, I don't know. That's a hard one. Collected company is a lot of value.
Yeah, exactly. This doesn't go wide the same way. I do know that Finale of Devastation, being able to get any creature, means that all of a sudden you're going to start seeing Kiki Angel decks and things like that were pretty hard to pull off before, just happen.
Yeah.
This just being a spell that you can accelerate into.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it for a little while because this card's really, really, really good.
And I think Vizier Remedies is kind of probably the best deck that this goes into because it makes infinite mana. So this can be used early game to find the pieces you need to win the game, and then can be used late game once you have infinite mana to get anything you need to win the game on top of that. So,
but here's my thought though. So like Kiki Angel or something like that, the reason that I think the Vizier of Remedies combo is good with this, but not quite as good, is your opponents will absolutely know I need to kill Devoted Druid and keep Devoted Druid the card that's not on the battlefield or in the graveyard, so that if they top deck the finale, they don't just cast it and win because the creature won't have haste. So I think that decks that just win if you have the two creatures in play, like Kiki Angel, is where you'll see this, like, if you have the mana and you just top deck this, you just win the game.
But the reason, and we don't have to get too far into this, but the reason that Vizier combo generally is considered better than the Angel Kiki combo is because those cards are inexpensive and good by themselves versus Kiki and Angel, which are both expensive, and one of them is not good unless you're winning.
And infinite mana means that this card wins if you have it in your hand.
Right. And so like it synergizes more with that deck, and it can also rebuy Devoted Druid if it's in your graveyard, right? Like the fact that even if they kill it, unless they use Path to Exile, you're getting it back. Finale of Glory, create X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with Vigilance. If X is 10 or more, create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. I think this card's good.
Yeah, this card's
I think as a control finisher,
I mean,
it's like White Sun Zenith, but way better.
On rate, think about this, guys. For 4 mana, you're getting 4 power. So white getting 4 power in 2 bodies for 4 is pretty good. Like,
yeah, and a token deck, easy.
That's playable.
Worse cards.
For 5, you're getting 6 power, and for 6, you're getting 8 power. Mm-hmm. Right there, just like 6 being the kind of top of what you're willing to cast as a spell.
6 mana, 8/8 over 4 bodies is really good.
Is really strong.
Yep.
I don't think you're almost ever going to have it cost 10, but like it's possible.
Yeah.
And it's way overkill if that's the case.
Yep. I think this next one is the second best one after the green one. It's red X. You may cast up to 1 target instant card and or up to 1 target sorcery card from your graveyard, each with converted mana cost X or less without paying their mana costs. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. If it is 10 or more, copy each of those spells twice. You may choose new copies for those copies. The 10 part isn't relevant. The fact that this can cast...
Yeah, Ancestral Vision.
It's Living End. Like, Living End no longer needs to play Cascade spells. It already was kind of there, but this is almost better than As Foretold with Electro Dominance, and this you can play mono red Living End decks.
Yeah, between this, the other card we talked about, the 1/3 with Trample, Electro Dominance, they're definitely leaning into this red being able to cast from the graveyard without its casting cost effect, which is interesting, and it should mean that those, like, if Ancestral Visions hasn't already spiked, I feel like it's going to spike.
The problem with Ancestral Visions is that this isn't that much better than... This is better than Electro Dominance. With Electro Dominance, the issue is that's just not better than Cathartic Reunion, because you have to discard 2 cards, Ancestral Visions, and to draw 3 cards, right? So this is better because it's in your graveyard already. So it's and you can get a second card, so you can get Ancestral Visions and Lightning Bolt, for instance, because then you can get a sorcery and instant for 3 mana, which is a huge rate, which is definitely good. The other thing is, now that there's enough of these, really looking at the other ones that aren't just Ancestral Visions or Living End. So the balance effect
Restore balance
is like really powerful.
Wheel of Fate,
especially even with Electro Dominance, because you're discarding 2 cards to pull it off. Wheel of Fate is really good with the mono red effects. I think that's really strong.
Yeah, there's some pretty interesting stuff here. Those time scroll cards all probably spiked.
Yep. Finale Revelation, X blue, sorcery, draw X cards if X is 10 or more. Instead, shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw X cards, untap up to 5 lands, and you have to no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. You then exile Finale Revelation. Draw X cards for 10 X. I mean, I don't know if I play this over Sphinx's Rev.
It's not an instant. It's one of its biggest downfalls.
Yeah. It's close. It's not there, though. The fact that you untap your lands, though, is relevant, but you have to be over 10 mana. Right. All right. Next cards. Those are the finales. We're going quick, guys, because we spent slightly too long.
We'll spend time on the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
Just like this card matters.
Flux Channeler, 2 and a blue, 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate.
Yeah, so this was specifically the card that our producer Marshall James was talking about. This is one that I mentioned with Pentad Prism. So with the Pentad Prism,
you go infinite. Or every instant or sorcery, every non-creature spell you cast that's 1 mana or less.
Yes.
So either net neutrals or goes up in mana.
So you play a Pentad Prism on 2. On 3, you play this card, untap, and at that point, every sleight of hand and Serum Visions and Faithless Looting in your deck proliferates that mana back onto the Pentad Prism, and you have, as long as you
I think you play both of these cards in a Jeskai Ascendancy deck, too.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Because, them together with Jeskai Ascendancy basically means that you win
twice as
most
fast.
ways. Yeah.
And like, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's, like it's really, really good. This is one of the best cards in the whole set. It's super interesting. It opens up a lot of different combos.
Say that a lot.
It's a really good set.
Yep.
And just like non-creature spell, this means that if you cast a planeswalker, it proliferates your other planeswalkers on cast. Like, this card is really, really...
It does a lot. And, like, the fact that you can just, like, cast a bunch of 0-mana artifacts off of it, just, like, you can go off with other things. I think it's really powerful.
It's a human and a wizard? Like,
yep. Well, the wizard hasn't been relevant yet, but the human side definitely is.
I just mean wizard is a relevant creature type. Yeah. Like, long term?
Long term, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. It's time. Gideon Blackblade.
Gideon Blackblade.
The hero we all deserved. White, colorless, legendary creature Gideon, legendary planeswalker Gideon. As long as it's your turn, Gideon the Blackblade is a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Gideon on your turn. So at a base level, Gideon just gets a free 0 of every other one of his cards ever printed. Like Gideon has had this ability.
He's a 3-mana 4/4 human soldier that's indestructible. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Gideon when it's your turn. Right. That's just what he is without his other abilities.
Right. And then you can +1 to up to one other target creature you control gains your choice of vigilance, lifelink, or indestructible. So it makes until end of turn, and the or -6 XL target non-land permanent. Now I think that's probably the weakest effect. The fact that like Gideon is just going to be a creature on your turn, but then like the other abilities it has are relatively medium, makes it worse. I thought when I first read it that its plus could target him.
Yeah, right.
And then I was like, okay.
Well, okay, so what's really fascinating about this card is like just right base level, as I mentioned, right? 4/4 indestructible for 3. That's great. Now the plus is probably relevant, but it's because it's up to 1, you still are able to plus him without having a target. So he can just plus and you're still getting a good creature. He's just a creature.
Right. He's giving a creature their vigilance or lifelink or indestructible, all 3 of which are super relevant because either 1, it makes it so you're protected, 2, you gain life, which we've talked about a few times that it's underrated, and 3, just giving your creature indestructible is obviously good.
There's no condition that makes you sad to have this card in play, and the opportunity cost is so low because he costs 3. The -6 starts to become relevant because it's not like he's a 1/1 if you -6 him down to 1 loyalty. He's still a 4/4, which means you just this guy sits in play for a few turns. Probably you're attacking, maybe you're not, maybe it's board stalled. You plus a few times, now you've got to Vindicate if you want it, and a 4/4. You're able to Vindicate their permanent, but also attack the same turn. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. Now, it's time to be sad, because Gideon has sacrificed himself. 1 white instant, choose a creature or planeswalker you control. All damage that would be dealt to you, all damage that would be dealt this turn to you and a permanent you control is dealt to the chosen permanent instead. For instant 1 white. So this is just like relatively okay. The thing that's really interesting to me is that in Boros Reckoner type decks, like we talked about before, this end any damage spell over 10 and having 2 creatures in play wins the game. Like any of the red board wipes that are all like relatively playable on their own. So like,
oh right, because it goes infinite, right?
Well, no, just all the damage. As long as you have more, as long as there is 10 damage being dealt to creatures you control and/or you on a turn. So if you have 5 creatures in play, this and a Boros Reckoner, and you can target Boros Reckoner with this, all the damage is dealt to Boros Reckoner, which then redirects it to a player. So you just need to get to 10 damage or 20 damage total to creatures you control, and there's tons of ways to do that. Just having 2 creatures and one of the spells that does 13 damage to every creature, for instance, does it by itself. You
need a few spells, though. You need like a Reckoner, this, and damage thing. Like you need a Blasphemous Act.
2 of those things are just already playable with each other, right? Like a Blasphemous Act and Boros Reckoner deck is not a thing that hasn't been seen before in Modern.
Right.
So this just sides into that deck as another piece.
That's fair.
And the last thing before we announce our winner of the Gaggle of Gideon's contest is Gideon's Triumphs, our preview card. You spent an entire episode talking about it. I don't think we need to go too deep into it, but we will announce the winner. Picked out ahead of time.
So just so you guys know, in case you're listening to this, but you didn't listen to that episode, the deal was that we were going to pick one listener of the show. You got multiple entries if you commented, if you subscribed, if you left an iTunes review, and we were going to pick somebody and give away one of each Gideon up to Gideon Blackblade because it wasn't out yet. We didn't know what it was. But all the other Gideons.
Right. We didn't want to put ourselves into a position where it was a $100 card.
So there's like 5 or 6 other Gideons, and so this lucky winner is going to get 1 copy of each Gideon shipped to you.
Yep. And that person is Tassafras.
Tassafras.
He commented on the YouTube channel. He said, I've actually used Gideon Champion of Justice because I would feel like it would be so cool if you want to game by using the insanely high casting ability.
Champion of Justice is the one that is terrible.
Yeah, it's the 4-mana one.
We spent the whole episode talking about how bad it is?
Yeah. I would be very excited. Hopefully he wins with the one we give him.
Oh, good Lord, am I excited about that. I spent the majority of that episode with Michael talking about that.
Yep.
I love it.
So congratulations, Tassafras. We're going to comment on your comment on the YouTube, but also if you can message us either on Facebook or Twitter so that we can get in contact with you, find us so we can help find you and get your address and send you all these sweet gifts.
Yep.
All right. On to the next card, Gleaming Overseer, blue, black, 1, zombie wizard. When it enters the battlefield, it mass 1, so it's a 1/4 that creates a 1/1 army token. Zombie tokens you control have hexproof and menace.
Really good.
I think
for this deck, really good.
I think, yeah, there's something to talk towards that there are a lot of different ways to create a zombie token tribal deck in Modern and take advantage of it. And this is probably the best Lord that I've seen. It comes with 2 bodies attached to it, and it gives your other zombie tokens hexproof and menace. I know that you love the flying spirit that does that.
I do. Yeah, Drog's captain.
So this is kind of a very similar version of this. It doesn't plus the zombies, but the zombies are already kind of beefy. Like, it's not like spirit tokens where you're getting a bunch of 1/1s. God Eternal Bantu, 3 black, black. We're now doing the God cycle. As we mentioned last week's episode, the gods of Amonkhet were killed by Bolas. It was a big moment, and then he made them Eternals, and they've showed up and are here to do damage. Everyone but, I said it last time. I'm forgetting, what's the red god? Hazaret died and is here. There's a new red god. We'll talk about that in a second. 3 black, black, legendary creature, zombie god, God Eternal Bantu, 5/6. Menace, when God Eternal Bantu enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards. When it dies or is put into the exile from the battlefield, you may put it into your owner's library, 3rd from the top.
So, okay, a 5/6 menace for 5 is fine. The second ability is what this card is interesting for.
The first ability.
Menace being
the first, sure.
Second ability, when God Eternal Bantu enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards. Okay, so let's think about that for a second. There are cards that return sacrificed or gone to the graveyard that turn permanents, like Faith's Reward is legal. You can play that. So that's interesting. It's kind of a way to get lots of value and do crazy, weird things.
Yeah, I'm more on the Aristocrats train of just like this being the top end. You play one of this in your Aristocrats deck. You're playing other cheaper versions of those effects, but when you play this, you either just like outright win the game because you have like 4 Blood Artists in play and you sacrifice them and they do 8 damage to them and you draw 4 cards, like, or no, it's what's 4 times 4 times 4, right? It's 4 times 4, it's 16 damage.
Yep.
And then you have a 5/6 Venice, meant like a guy that is able to pretty much dodge most removal in the format and do a lot of damage. Or just like you get like, yeah, you have like spirit tokens or like other things like Lingering Souls in this gets you 4 cards and you get a 5/6 menace. And you could just sacrifice lands. You can play this, sacrifice all your lands and draw 5 cards. Next is God Eternal Kefnet, 2 blue, blue, zombie god, legendary creature, flying 4/5. You may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, copy that card and you may cast the copy. The copy costs 2 less to cast.
This card is really good.
A 4/5 flying for 4/5 at one point in Magic history would have been the best creature ever printed. We're much past that, but it's already a very, very strong rate. You add the fact that now it kind of draws you a card every time you get an instant or sorcery, and then miracles that card. Is very powerful. Then add the fact that it also, like, if they try killing it, you're just going to get it back in 3 turns. This card seems really good.
This card is most aggressively costed, I think, of these guys because...
It is the only 4-drop.
Well, it's also like the one that when you think about, like you said, just on rate, you're happy to draw this card. Like you're gonna probably like do some damage with this card if you just draw it. None of the other text even matters because it's a 4/5 flyer for 4. If that's all you're getting, you're still pretty stoked, and the other ability is great.
Yeah, and if you untap with it, you gain, like, either you untap it or you gain value. They try getting rid of it and you gain value. There's a lot of things that are going well for you here.
Yeah, it costs 2 less to cast. I mean, the one thing I was saying about this card is that I think that second ability can be a little misleading only because you may cast it if it costs 2 less you may cast that is the relevant part. It costing 2 less means you have to play more expensive cards to really get the mana reduction value. Well, that's like not something you really want to do.
Sure, but there are like Wrath of God effects are already 4 mana that you can reduce the 2 that you're playing. You get obviously you kill this, but it gets put back on top of your deck.
I guess 3 mana Cryptic Command is fine.
Yep.
But it doesn't. I guess in my mind, I'm like, okay, how can you take advantage of the second ability the most? And it's by playing things that have 2 colorless symbols in their casting cost. And in Modern, it's like that doesn't really exist. If Factor Fiction,
1 mana is fine. Like Factor Fiction, well, not even Factor Fiction. Like just Gifts Ungiven with this.
Gifts is great. If Factor Fiction gets printed,
Burial Rites with this is really good.
Factor Fiction getting printed into Modern Horizons, which is probably going to happen, would be really good.
Probably seems really strong, but
that's like one of the cards that I have a pretty strong feeling about.
I do think just like a gift stack with this, actually, an Esper gift stack. Lingering Souls off of this is really good too. Like there's like
Lingering Souls off this is amazing.
Yeah, like that's like a big play.
1 mana Lingering Souls.
You get 1 mana Lingering Souls, and you get to keep the original Lingering Souls, so you get 6 tokens off of that card for 6 mana. I just sold you on the card.
Yeah, so good.
God Eternal Oketra, 3 white legendary creature zombie card. It has double strike. It's a 3/6. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. 5 mana is a lot. It does a lot. This card is very powerful. I can't imagine you losing with this in play and untapping.
I agree. Yeah.
But playing this card and untapping in a deck that's playing creatures seems hard.
I mean, if it cost 4 and was a 2/4, I would be way more stoked.
If every number on this was reduced by 1, including making double strike even into first strike, I think this card would be
making
playable.
a 3/3 instead of a 4/4, I would be so much happier.
All of it was reduced by 1, and if you get to keep double strike, good gravy. But yeah, I agree.
It's just a little out of range, but in like your
she's shooting a bow out of range.
Nice.
This was maybe the coolest story reveal in Magic history. Did you see that when this happened? No. So the story moment is Gideon asks a Pegasus if he could ride it to kill Nicol Bolas. Gets on the Pegasus, rides it. Oketra shoots the Pegasus, so Gideon's just like falling through the air, and Rakdos picks him up, and he rides Rakdos to go take on Nicol Bolas.
Demon Lord of Riots, Rakdos?
Yeah, like the god of the Rakdos.
Oh wow!
And so it's like there's this cool card, but we're not going to review it because it's like a +2 and flying.
Rakdos?
Yeah,
sounds pretty cool.
And then Nicol Bolas like slaps him down, breaks the sword.
I was going to say with the printing of, we're going to talk about Neoform in a little bit, but
next week it's the first card we talk about in the 3rd episode. Sorry,
but the printing of that and like Eldritch Evolution and things like that
make some of these bigger guys more.
The more of those that they do, the more you're like, all right, in a creature deck, like I could see playing this.
I think if like rating the gods, if God Eternal Kefnet currently is my number 1 pick, I think God Eternal Rhonas is actually probably the most likely to see play and the second and is the best pick of these gods.
Let's talk about God Eternal Rhonas.
3 green legendary creature zombie god. God Eternal Rhonas is a 5/5 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, double the power of each other creature you control. Until end of turn, they gain vigilance until end of turn.
It has that like Xenagos double power thing going for it.
To all creatures. So it's a castable version of Crater Hoof Behemoth.
Yeah.
So if you already have an army that you want to just get big, this wins the game.
Also,
and 5 mana for that effect is a thing people cast.
Well, also, I mean, green doesn't deal with vigilance that often, but in a deck like you're talking about, where green wants to tap its creatures to generate mana, but also wants to attack, vigilance is pretty relevant.
Yeah, like you can cast this in elves, attack with the team other than the elf that you use to cast this guy, and then tap them for mana to
cast something amazing.
Cast a tutor spell or collect a company, or there's like it makes math so much harder for your opponent. Yeah, just like playing this, attacking with all your elves, and then they block, and then you collect a company and get 2 lords in the play.
Well, also because his ability is an enter the battlefield ability, killing him and putting him 3rd from the top is so much worse for your opponent. Yes, because
you just keep getting the double effect.
Like recasting Kefnet or Oketra is like fine. Recasting this is exactly what you want to do.
Yeah. Bantu's close. Like you want to rebuy that sacrifice effect, but yes, this is easily the best for that.
Yeah.
God-pharaoh statue, 6 mana legendary artifact. Spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. This was Nick Prince's number 1 pick for the set.
Really?
He thought this card makes Tron possibly too powerful.
Okay, I know.
Because on turn 3, your opponent no longer can cast spells.
Yeah, I suppose because I hadn't thought about this card for Modern when I first looked at it. I think the reason I thought about this and like dismissed it was because our buddy Eric sent me an image of this card and was like, new finisher and land destruction Highlander. I was like, stupid 6 mana card.
That is the worst version of that.
I was like, this card's terrible. This will never.
Playing this on turn 3 to make it so that every land destruction spell costs 4 mana in the format. At best, every removal spell costs 3. The best enchantment artifact removal costs 4.
Yeah. Like the losing life is like irrelevant. It's just the fact that you could just cast this off Tron and just win.
And then you buy yourself 3 turns. And 3 turns and through 3 turns,
Probably casting at least a planeswalker.
9, 12, at least 30 mana.
I mean, in Tron, generally speaking, like when you're playing against them and they start to hit their like Tron, you're like, okay, do I have enough ways to interact with you and stop you or kill you in time? And like each turn, you're like, what giant thing are you going to play this turn? So
like this wins the game against most decks in a way that even Karn doesn't currently. Because like Karn, they can play it and then you'll just lose the Phoenixes.
Yeah.
They play this, Phoenix can't play spells anymore.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a pretty strong play.
In fact, that a card that we will be reviewing later in the episode can find this out of your sideboard even is like an entire next level.
Yeah, Tron's already so good. I wonder if this is going to be the thing that gets I wonder if this will be the thing that like bans Ancient Stirrings.
I think this set could put Tron over the edge.
Yeah. Ancient Stirrings gets banned. Probably. That's the card.
Yeah. Maybe. Like Wizards has been much more on the like ban cards out of decks that are problematic. I could just see like a Tron piece getting banned or actually Expedition Map more.
Really?
Yeah, the colorless ability to find lands. That's the card that I think I would ban. If I'm trying to hit Tron but not like hurt every deck that's playing Ancient Stirrings, which is what Wizards has been on the train of recently.
Yeah.
Like, I banned Expedition Map over this. Like, that's the card that, like, lets every color play Tron or lets Tron be colorless. Like,
and hit your turn 3 Tron.
Which means that you don't have to play with bad lands. Like, there's, like, a lot.
Because map's a little more random.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Heartwarming Redemption, 2 red, white, instant, discard all cards in your hand, then draw that many cards +1. You gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. This card does a lot. It is also the first time I think I've like teared up a little bit while reading a Magic card.
Kithion had known war every day of his life. Now he finally knew peace.
So this is the card that it confirms Gideon is dead. So those are his best friends when they were kids that were all murdered because Gideon was like thought he was better than a god, and then the black god and Theros killed him, all of his buddies, and he survived, and they walked to get like that's when his planeswalker sparked.
So he's dead and he's now in heaven?
Yeah. Huh. That's what this revealed. Is Gideon is confirmed dead. Unlike Dak, who like we don't know.
I love you, but I want to make fun of you so much for being a nerd. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to.
Are you saying you didn't? You're going to cry tonight during whatever Marvel movie you're going to watch? Tears everywhere, bawling.
Probably. I've heard that.
This card, from a play perspective, is also just really powerful. Like instant speed. You windfall your hand. You discard your hands. You go. You net neutral. Normally, this type of effects you net down because it discard your card and draw how many cards you discarded. But you draw 1 extra one, which replaces the Heartwarming Redemption. But it takes the turn off, but you gain life. Like this is the type of card that life gain is so important for because you get to like basically sculpt your hand to be better. And then, but because you took your turn off, normally you're like, oh, I took like 6 damage and that wasn't worth it. This, by gaining life, time walks your opponent's attack step while also putting you in a better position. Not to mention all the cards you just discarded that hopefully you're getting value off of.
I don't know what deck this is necessarily like amazing in, but I had for the longest time experimented with like a weird Goblin Electromancer Baral flashback deck in Modern. I do like the idea of playing like an Electromancer on turn 2 and then end of turn on turn 3, discarding all your flashback spells for 3, drawing the card, and like now your graveyard's just full of value.
Or just like casting this in Dredge is insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like here's all my dredgers, and now I dredged all of them.
Yeah.
Like I think you might you might be able to win just off of like a combo play with Lab Maniac or the new Jace, which we won't talk about until in a second. Yeah, I think this card's really cool. And it's like out of the color pie normally, like red-white normally doesn't do this. Huatli the Sunsart, 2 green-white. Legendary Planeswalker Huatli. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. You gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. There's 2 things that make this interesting. One is that just like we now have a lot of different ways to make that toughness thing work. I think this is better than some of the other ones that are out there just because gaining life is better than an enchantment that does nothing.
Blue one now or something?
There's a blue-green one. They now made this a thing that they're willing
Assault
to print a lot.
Formation, Doran,
this
blue-green one.
And a blue-green one, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Moving on.
Yeah.
Glad that this is an effect they're playing with more. It's really popular. One other thing, Huatli being on Theros Huatli being on Ravnica has now given the Simic dinosaur creature type.
Right.
Because dinosaurs did not exist on Ravnica before this set. Now there are many dinosaurs on Ravnica for Huatli just being there.
Can I just ask a noob question?
Yeah.
From the perspective of like story and all that, why is this like Time Spiral 2? What's the deal with the whole like they're going to every plane and doing things? Is like War of the Spark? There's like
all the planeswalkers from 90% of planeswalkers ever printed are on Ravnica at the same time.
So that's the deal. It's like it's pieces of all the different sets from the last 10
because they're all from
years.
different places, so like they're all different. They're all here.
For confirmation that I pay zero attention to story.
So you don't know, like you didn't even pay attention. Like this has been the biggest story moment in Magic's history.
There's a set coming out called War of the Spark. I saw a trailer. It had some characters I recognized and a Linkin Park song.
Got it.
I'm excited for the cards.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So this is the biggest story event in Magic history.
Got it. Okay.
The biggest thing they pulled off.
Next up is Huatli's Raptor.
No.
Are you not talking about Huatli's Raptor?
You can talk about Huatli's Raptor.
We'll talk about it for 10 seconds. It's a green-white Huatli's Raptor, 2/3 Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, proliferate. I think that's sweet. It's a 2/3 creature for 2 that proliferates.
It's worse than the Lion or the token card that's a 3/3 for 2, and that card is not played anywhere.
Moving on.
There's other really good proliferate effects, but I think proliferate needs to be repeatable.
Don't have to be a jerk about it.
Sorry. Dinosaurs, like we could get a dinosaur octopus crab next set that we go to Ravnica. That's what I'm hyped about.
Let's talk about Ignite the Beacon.
Ignite the Beacon is 4 and a white instant. Search your library up to 2 planeswalker cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's an instant. And that's the only reason this is relevant. I thought this was a sorcerer, and then when I was doing this card selection, I realized it's an instant. Getting a Gideon and a Teferi, or a Teferi and a Jace at the end of your opponent's turn, and then untapping and being able to cast one of those cards.
This card will be fine right up until the moment where they print a second planeswalker that costs 3 that combos with another 3-mana planeswalker to win the game.
And then it'll be
good. Really good. Because then it'll be end of turn. I can just get my win condition and just win if I hit my 6th land drop.
I think this is the best Planeswalker tutor printed. I think this is much more of a commander card or even Highlander roulette card than it is necessarily modern, but I think it even has fringe modern playable factors. This is a Johnny calling all the Planeswalkers to Ravnica so that they show up, but then they get trapped by the Immortal Sun, which is what's on top of Hollowed Fountain.
Got it. The Immortal Sun.
From Ixalan.
Okay, sweet.
That's what trapped all of them there.
Cool.
Remember when I talked about Angrath last episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Next, the last god, Urgarg. I'm never going to say that name correctly. The Raise Boar. Way easier to say. 3 red, legendary creature, boar god. Trample, when Urgarg, the Raise Boar, attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. It's a 6/6. It has the god ability where it gets put on the 3 from the top. I think this card's playable.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, okay, so it's a 6/6 trample for 5, which is fine on its own. You're like, okay, casting that and attacking. And obviously when you attack, if you have some combo card in your hand that's going to like just crush like an Emrakul, awesome. But you still have to cast a 5-mana creature that doesn't have haste. So like,
It also does it with Primeval Titan.
no, I mean, like I totally understand. Like, but in the vein of Through the Breach, it's just like, if I'm going to spend 5 mana for something
You'd rather
that
Through the Breach.
doesn't do anything,
Sure.
and I have to untap with it to do anything, I don't see this card ever seeing play.
Okay.
I think it's just a little weak.
Okay.
No? You think it'll see play?
Every card that's ever been able to cheat Emrakul in play has been interesting to look at. This does that.
What's the biggest thing that's going to exist in Standard? Because if there's something great in Standard, probably, but...
There's a few different targets, I'd imagine. I mean, in Highlander Roulette, I'm going to play the crap out of this card.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because it can cheat Emrakul into play.
You want more Through the Breaches.
Yeah. Interplanar Beacon. Whenever you cast a Planeswalker spell, you gain 1 life. Add a colorless by tapping it. 1, tap it. Add 2 mana of any of different colors. Spend this mana only to cast Planeswalker spells.
That's cool. It's cool that there's going to be a Planeswalker tribal land. Like,
If there's a Planeswalker deck that is more than 2 colors, this is playable.
sometimes, and the card type specific lands over the years, some have seen play, some haven't. Like Ancient Ziggurat didn't see play for like 10 years.
Right.
Now it's like a 4 of.
Yeah.
You know, like one of these days, Pillar of the Perins or something is going to see play, or Primal Beyond, and like this is just in the same.
People will play this card. It's never going to be exciting. It's going to do exactly what you expect it to do, but it's always going to just be like, what's cool about it and what's a little powerful in a Planeswalker deck is like Planeswalker cards are all inherently life gain cards because the best way to get rid of them is to attack them, which means that you're not being attacked, which means you're getting life off of this. This increases that effect because every planeswalker you cast is also actually gaining you life. So it like is just kind of a double rubbins.
The rubbins.
This is the Interplanar Beacon. This is what's calling everyone.
You're explaining the cards to me now?
Every card is a story moment. That's why it's so big. Invade the city. 1 blue red. Amass X or X is the amount of instants and/or sorcery cards in your graveyard. That's it. It's a sorcery. It's a 3 mana, however many instants or sorceries you have.
It's fine. It's just a 3 mana get a big creature.
But yeah,
It's fine. I mean, it's a big creature.
It can get really big. I think the Drake is better.
Was Urza Academy Headmaster the first Wooburg Planeswalker?
It is still the only Wooburg Planeswalker.
There's not a Wooburg Planeswalker in the set?
No, there's only an unglued one. There is a Wooburg Niv-Mizzet.
Oh, that's what I was mixing
which
up.
is dope.
I thought.
Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. 1 blue. 3 blue. One color. 4 mana. Legendary Planeswalker Jace. It has the static ability of if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. It has a plus ability of target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard and draws a card. It has a -8 of draw 7 cards. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Now, when this card was previewed, it was one of the first cards previewed. People were kind of confused about why is the -8 and the stack ability redundant. And the reason is that if you -8 and it didn't have the redundancy, you would lose the game, not win it, because the static ability would no longer be relevant because you would be sacrificing Jace to do it. So they had to put it on both ends so that it worked even if you ultimated.
And this is the card.
Hawali also, not Hawali. I forget the name. We'll get to it.
This is also the
There's
card
another Planeswalker that does that.
Combos with Thought Lash to win the game.
Why?
Isn't that the case? Didn't we talk about that? Thought Lash?
What's the word Thought Lash?
No, Thought Lash, the card from the Alliance's card.
What does it do?
Yeah, we talked about this. I bought a bunch of them because it was tweeted about.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. Yeah, you look at that while I talk about why this is cool. I mean, what's cool about this is that this is the second time this effect has been printed. The first one was, what's the creature that does this? I just mentioned it earlier. Laboratory Maniac. This is a card that is more playable than I think a 3-mana Laboratory Maniac. The fact that this lets you put cards into your graveyard and draws you a card every turn while also creating this threat of, like, you get to draw a bunch of cards, or if my deck goes away, I win the game. Having 2 versions of that effect is also really powerful. You can be a little bit more redundant on it. I think this is really strong.
Thought Lash is an Alliance's rare. It's on the reserve list. It's blue 2. Cumulative upkeep. Exile the top card of your library. It has an ability for 0. Remove the top card of your library from the game. Prevent 1 damage to you. That's the point. So
you can just remove your whole.
You can exile your entire library and just ultimate.
As long as there's a damage being dealt.
No. Prevent.
Yeah, you have to target that damage, right? Or no? Or does it prevent the next?
The next one.
Damage. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just win the game.
Yeah, so Thought Lash. And they're both blue, and they're cost 4, and with Force of Will. I think it just, in Legacy, this was like a discussion. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but...
I think Jace Wielder Mysteries is going to see a ton of play across many formats, just because that same reason that Laboratory Maniac is played everywhere, and especially in singleton formats where you, like, having 2 of an effect is really good. This is really good. In Modern, he does a lot of different things. I can see him play. Jaya, Venerated Fire Mage. 4 in a red, legendary Planeswalker Jaya. If another red source you control would deal 1 damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage plus 1 to that permanent or player instead. -2, deal 2 damage. It's a 5 loyalty, so it can just deal 2 damage to any target twice. So it's like 2 shocks. This effect exists in Modern, doesn't really see much play. The fact that it comes with the Planeswalker with removal spells is cool. I'm good moving on.
It's an uncommon. This will be probably a first pick in Limited, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's a double removal spell.
Yep.
Jiang Yang, Wildcrafter. This is another one. 2 green. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter adds a 1 mana of any color. You can put a creature +1/+1 counter on any creature. I can see this being like taking one of the +1/+1 counter decks and making it kind of like an Elves-esque like combo piece. Like you can. I feel like eventually, if it doesn't already exist, there's a way to go infinite with this card.
Well, you said it adds. What it's saying, just to clarify for those on audio, gives your creatures the ability to tap for 1 mana of any color. So yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, this does what Rishkar, Pima Renegade, does, except it's for any color instead of just green. And he comes down on 3 and -1 or -2 to get with
-1. So it can give 2 +1/+1 counters. It literally does what Rishkar does in 2 turns. Because
Can do it 3 times. It kills itself to do it a third time,
so
right?
you get 3 counters out of it. They no longer can tap for mana.
Oh,
he has to be in play
once the
for
ability's
mana
gone.
tapping.
Got it. Yeah.
But
strong, though. Pretty strong.
If you have creatures that already have the counter, all of them can tap for any color. So
Yeah.
I think there's reasons to talk towards that.
I think there's going to be an explosion of like +1/+1 counter effect type of interactions that we start to see. There's just so many, and between the last couple sets too. Like even if it's just like, and this is a bad example because this won't see play, but like take something like Herald of Secret Streams, the 4-mana Merfolk that creatures you control with counters on them can't be blocked. Like the number of effects like that now exist over Magic's history, and the amount of things that are just like implementing counters, I think you're going to start to see weird interactions that you never saw coming.
Speaking of counters, Karn's Bastion land. Tapped out of colorless, untapped when it enters the play. 4-mana tap proliferate.
This is sweet.
This was the Professor's top 5, one of his top 5 cards in the set for Modern. This card does a lot. I think out of Infect, it lets you kind of endgame them if they are able to kill all your creatures.
Yeah.
Out of like Affinity, it lets you kind of do the same thing if you need to. Out of Affinity, it's really good with all your other cards. It's good with a Planeswalker deck. It's really versatile. I think it's a little slow.
So like historically, when you look at like proliferate and how it's existed in the past, because anybody who's ever like loved proliferate has done the search, the keyword search, and one of the cards you always come across is the Contagion Clasp, which is 2 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, put a -1/+1 counter on target creature, and then for 4 mana and tap, it proliferates. The fact that this doesn't have the -1/-1, but is a land and just does the same exact thing, and it's an untapped land, is like proof of, okay, we wanted to push proliferate. Like that is the definition right there. It's not even a legendary land, right?
It is not. It is just a regular land.
You can play more of these than one. Yeah, pretty good.
Well, but like they're not better in.
No, I'm not saying you'd activate more than one. I'm saying you can play 4 in your main deck because
Make sure
they're not
guarantee
legendary.
Drawing it.
They're not legendary.
Yeah. There's no cost to having it. Yeah, I agree with that. Next, and we've said this a few times, but this is one of the best cards in this set, if not the best. Karn, the Great Creator. 4 mana for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker, legendary Planeswalker Karn. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. +1 until your next turn, up to 1 target non-creature artifact because an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to the converted mana cost. Each equal to its converted mana cost. -2, you may choose an artifact card you own from outside of the game, or in exile, reveal the card and put it into your hand. If you have 11 mana in Tron and you cast this card and you have a Mycosynth Lattice in your sideboard, you make it so your opponent no longer can win the game. That's why Mycosynth Lattice bumped. So 10 mana, not 11, 10 mana. So Mycosynth Lattice, for those who don't know, is a 6 mana artifact. All permanents are artifacts in addition to their other types.
So people, they can no longer tap their lands.
Let me read the card for people listening.
Got it. Okay.
All permanents are artifacts in addition to their other types. All cards that aren't on the battlefield, spells, and permanents are colorless. Players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. The key point here being all their lands are artifacts. They no longer can activate those abilities. It's not no mana of abilities. It's all abilities.
Wow, that's pretty good.
So, and his -2, so you have Mycosynth Lattice in your sideboard. You play Karn with 10 mana, so it's the turn 4 with Tron pieces and another Tron piece. You -2, get it, put it into play, and they can still attack Karn. Like if they have creatures in play already, they can still attack, so that's the one thing you have to be wary of. But otherwise, you lock them out. And if they do have creatures, instead of getting Mycosynth Lattice, you can get any other artifact you want to stop their creatures from attacking you.
So like this set is going to push Tron over the edge. Like, Tron's going to have
this card more than the other one is one of the pieces. Like because Karn can for 6 mana also get that card.
Yeah.
And still win, and he can -2 the next turn, so he could like Karn, Mycosynth Lattice, and then get a win condition. Like
he also can
get a work
minus
well
to
engine.
make that thing or the Lattice into a 6/6.
Yeah.
So he just like locks you
Or
out.
plus,
and
it is not even minus. Plus to make it
then
Lattice into a 6/6.
Pluses and attacks with the 6/6.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so good.
And not to mention just the ability is generically good. Like there's a bunch of artifacts that I want to shut down my opponents from playing on 4. And the fact that it can make your like expedition map or other 1-drop or other artifacts the deck is playing, which it plays artifacts into just creatures that can block for it. Because it's until the next turn, right?
Just ends affinity, right?
Until your next turn.
Doesn't this just ends affinity?
Stony
Silence on a
bad for affinity. Yeah. And that's just Tron. Like the fact that it can do all these things outside of Tron is also relevant. Any deck can play Stony Silence now.
It only costs 4.
Yeah, and then you get the -2, which means you just get artifacts like good hate cards. Like it's a great sideboard wish card. Really powerful.
Good. Yeah, really good.
Kasmina Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor. 3 in a blue, legendary planeswalker, Kasmina. New card, new character. 5 loyalty planeswalker. Spells your opponents cast that targeted creature or planeswalker you control cost 2 more to cast. And it -2s to create a 2/2 wizard creature token. Draw a card, then discard a card. That second ability has 3 abilities. It's a lot of words. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I like getting a 2/2 blue wizard creature. I like drawing a card. I don't like discarding a card as much.
I like discarding a card a lot.
Yeah, well, you love that stuff. But you're also, it's also not creating card advantage. It's creating card selection.
Sure, but it also then protects your creatures and planeswalkers from targeted spells. It's fine.
It's okay.
Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner. 2 green-blue, legendary planeswalker. Kiora, when a very creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. -1, untap target permanent, 7 loyalty. Of all of the cards in the set, when I asked Twitter what card people were most excited about from this set, this was the number 1 answer.
So interesting, because like it's
fine.
We've had this effect before, right? Isn't this Triumph of Ferocity? Isn't that what this card is?
But it's not. Triumph of Ferocity was an enchantment that came into play and did nothing. This like it protects itself kinda because you can use the Birds of Paradise. You use the play it. Like people, I think, are excited about it in mono green decks too because the untapping ability in mono green.
It's fine. I think like I like that it's blue green.
It's technically a 2-mana walker.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting.
In the same way that Teferi is a 3-mana walker because it untaps the lands.
It has high loyalty, which is good. Like the fact that it comes down early and you don't have to necessarily protect it because they probably won't be able to kill it that fast.
Right.
It's pretty good. But
like playing this on turn 2 in a mono green stompy deck is I think what people are excited about because because every other card in the deck is a 4 or greater power, so you're going to draw a lot of cards off of it. And the fact that it does Atlanta Werewolf effect, the fact that it can protect itself by untapping things, I think it just does a lot of little things that people like. It's interesting, I agree. When I saw the card, I wasn't that excited about it, but the fact that I am also not a mono green stompy expert, so... Krenko Tin Street Kingpin, 2 in a red, legendary creature goblin. Whenever Krenko Tin Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power. The thing that's exciting here is that they really want goblins to be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, this card is good. I like this card. He does things right away. I mean, his only issue is that he doesn't attack. He doesn't have haste.
Yeah,
so
if he had haste, it'd be a little bit, but he's a 2/3 that gets. That's a 2/3 that when he attacks gets 2 1/1 tokens.
Yeah, like it's pushed. I mean,
yeah,
I think
and then every turn you get more tokens. Yeah,
is Rabble Master still just definitely better?
I don't know if it is. Like the fact that you don't have to attack with the tokens you get means that he doesn't have the Rabble Master problem where like he gets capped out. The fact that if you can make him bigger, like it's just power. So give him like the Bone Splitter thing you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Give any way to make him bigger, he gets much better. And the fact that Rabble Master gets 1 token a turn. He gets 2 tokens the first turn he attacks. 3 tokens the second turn he attacks. 4 turns the next time he attacks.
Him and the other guy I was just thinking about the example I used with Become Immense. 1 Become Immense that pluses the creature then allows you to recast
8/1 with Become Immense. This makes 8/1/1 tokens.
No. Is it with the other creature? Can't you attack? You Become Immense pre-combat.
Yeah.
You then attack, and it allows you to recast Become Immense.
Yes.
You double Become Immense.
I think so.
Right?
What's Become Immense's converted mana cost?
7. I think. No, it's 6. I think it's 6.
It's 6. So yeah.
That's sick.
So you could have both attack with this. That's like a thing.
I mean, this seems worse because this costs 3, and like you're not going to attack till turn 4.
The other thing is that most Goblin Lords give Goblins haste.
Yes, Dreadhorde Arcanist, and he has Trample, which is like, that's so nuts.
That's really cool.
That's so cool. And
you already want to be casting a bunch of small spells to turn off
already want
Delve.
Faithless Looting to get your Delve going.
I don't think it's good with Krenko, but I think it's really good with.
That seems.
So he's talking about Dreadhorde Arcanist. We talked about it last week on the podcast. So go watch that episode.
That's means very likely that on turn 3 you can 13 them if you set your deck up correctly.
Yeah.
You have to not exile the Become Immense. No, that would never.
To do it on turn 3, you'd have on turn 1 mill 2 cards. You'd
Fetch land, looting.
Fetch land, Faithless Looting, or fetch land, the 1 mana, get 2 cards blue.
Thought Scour.
Yep. So that puts 1, 2, 3, 4 cards in your graveyard. Turn 2, you play him. Turn 3, any fetch land in that time or anything, and Become Immense, you win, yeah.
Well, you do 13.
That's a lot.
And in fact, if you have a double strike spell, you just absolutely win.
You win with, that's the thing you win with, yeah. Or any pump spell, yeah.
Or something that gives him infect, like...
also, putting your opponent at 13 on turn 3 is generally going to win you the game.
Especially for like playing bolts and stuff.
Yeah, just like especially with this guy, you want to play bolts anyways. Yeah.
I like this guy.
Makes a red-green stompy.
Maybe we should buy this guy.
Liliana's Triumph. 1 and a black. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. This card's insane.
This card is really, really good.
Instant Speed Edict that like requires you to play the most played planeswalker in modern history to then make them discard a card.
Yes. This card, like the double... If you get 2... In fact, I like almost all the Triumphs. It's funny, the red one I think is the worst one. I like the green one too.
I don't like the blue one. It's draw 2 cards or draw 3 cards if you have a Jace.
Oh, okay.
You know what I don't need to do when I have a Jace in play?
Yeah.
Well, I do need to draw cards, but Jace is doing that for me.
This one and the green one are my 2 favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The green one's insane.
They're both really good.
This card's really good. I even like ours. I like Gideon Triumph. Like that card is very playable. Next card, and the main character of the set, and if you look at the Japanese promos, the best art of all of them. Liliana, Dreadhorde General, 4 black. Liliana Planeswalker, 6 loyalty. When she comes in, whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. +1, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Right now, a lot of people are comparing her to Elspeth Sun's Champion. There are differences, but they're all kind of like not necessarily which one is better or which one's worse. For instance, Elspeth's +1 is better than Liliana's +1 of getting 2/2 zombies, 1 2/2 zombie versus 3 1/1s. I'd much rather have 3 1/1s, but it's not that far off. But the fact that you draw cards whenever a creature dies, and the fact that you can then -4 immediately to have them sacrifice 2 creatures, and you sacrifice creatures that you have to gain value, means that she can come in on 6 and draw 4 cards, kill 2 creatures of theirs, and then on the next turn start just protecting herself with zombies.
She's pushed, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's nice that the sacrifice 2 creatures ability is like, I'm going to play the 6-drop that does a lot of damage to the board, but then also draws me a bunch of cards. Yep. Is like, that's like right off the bat, just like I can imagine.
It's creatures you control, so it's not their creatures. Sorry, I read that wrong. So you have to have the creatures in play, but it lets you sacrifice your creatures to gain those. I still think it's good. I think in Jund decks, if decks were looking to play Elspeth Sun Champion that were grindy, Jund now has that tool that they didn't have before.
Makes sense.
Living Twister. I'm so excited about this card. Red, green, creature elemental, 1 and a red. It's a 2/5, which is super relevant. 1 and a red, discard a land card. Living Twister deals 2 damage to any target. Maybe discard a land card, do 2 damage to any target is a pretty big list of favorite words to be on a Magic card of mine.
Baby Borborygamos or something?
Baby Borgamos, or I kind of wish this was just a legendary Borgamos at 3 mana. I understand why that wasn't going to be a thing they did, and it feels like it might have been for a while, and they decided they weren't allowed to print a 3 mana Borgamos, or they like realized that he dies in the story or something.
Interesting.
You 1 green, return a tapped land you control to its owner's hand.
This card is really good.
2/5 for 3 that does a lot of these. Like, this is a type of deck that I think is on the verge of always being playable. And the more pieces we have towards that, the closer it gets. And I love all of these pieces. It's a little expensive. Obviously, I wish it was 1 mana to discard a land to do 2 damage. But the fact that you can play it on 2/5, you can just do things in the late game. You can just return a bunch of these lands you're not using to just throw at your opponent. It seems really strong. Yeah. Massacre Girl. 3 black, legendary creature, human assassin, menace. When Massacre Girl enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until end of turn.
I love the design on this card.
It's really cool.
It's like this more fun and probably this is probably a Commander All-Star, I'm guessing. Like somebody in Commander seems to just love this card.
Yes, well, there's also not a lot of creatures that enter the battlefield and board wipe unconditionally, and she conditionally does it, but the condition is A, really cool, and B, like pretty easy to make work.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you don't get it,
multiplies.
What it does is that the -1/-, if there's a 1/1 creature, that means all 2/2 creatures are going to die, because then it does 1 additional -1. And if there's a 2/2 creature, then all 3/3 creatures, basically it steps up the power cost, and so it can chain react, which is really cool.
Yeah, I just think the design's cool.
Yeah.
This is a great example of like the people that work at Wizards being like, oh, this is a fun idea that's never been done.
Yeah.
Cool. Even if this is like less competitive tier 1, this is like a really fun effect.
I think she's a standard all-star.
Standard, she's probably good.
I think she makes a lot of X1s no longer playable in standard by existing.
And in limited, I'm sure she's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlimited, she's a bomb.
Yeah.
A board wipe in limited is a bomb, and she comes attached to a 4/4 menace buddy. Mayhem Devil, 1 red black. Creature Devil, 3/3, so 3 for 3. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. 2 things, it's any permanent, so fetch lands trigger this. 2, it is any target, which means that you can hit planeswalkers, creatures, or players. So you can, with this in play, fetch a land to kill creatures.
Yes, and this also becomes an engine card that allows you to do any number. Like there's a ton of combos over the years that are just like useless loop sacrifice trigger effects that don't actually do anything, where you need like a third thing in play.
Yeah, this can be that third thing. There's a bunch of different cool, cute things you can do here that are really powerful. And it's just like, it's another good Aristocrats Blood Artist effect. That like, they just printed the other one in the last set, the red-black one that gives all your creatures +1/+1 or +1/+0. Forgetting her name. Legendary creature.
Diva, Scourge Diva.
Yeah. Dea, I don't know how to say it. I'm not going to get the name right.
Judith, the Scourge Diva.
Another version of that effect. Different. I think that Judith is better if you're doing the creature route, but this, like, you had your Greater Gargadon deck for a long time, and this is insane with Greater Gargadon. Mobilized District. It's a land, tap for colorless. Mobilized District becomes a 3/3 citizen creature with vigilance until end of turn for 4 mana. It's still a land. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature and planeswalker you control. So this can be a creature land that is 0 mana, make a 3/3 and attack.
Yeah.
I mean, like, one of the best creature lands of all time is the ape one, the 3/3 green. Treetop Village. This doesn't come into play tapped, doesn't produce a mana, but comes into play untapped, and the creature you're making can be very inexpensive very easily. It's easy to have planeswalkers and easy to have creatures in play that are legendary right now.
Legendary creatures tend to be pretty color heavy, so it's a little weird to play a colorless land, but
not always. There's like in Elves, this is good. There's a bunch of mono green legendary creatures in Elves that you're playing in.
That's the tenuous design space. Obviously, because it's a colorless land, and like so often legendary does require color. But that's fun. I like this card.
Yeah,
it's cool. I don't think it'll see any modern play, but maybe.
I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I think every creature land has ever that can be 2 or less mana to make a 3/3 creature is likely to see play.
Interesting.
Because it doesn't tap for mana, but also comes into play untapped. Like Treetop Village only taps for green, but comes into play tapped and saw tons of play.
Interesting.
So you don't have to take a turn off. I think it's very playable.
Yeah, maybe.
Narset's Reversal, blue, instant, copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for this copy.
So it's like a remand twin cast hybrid.
Yeah, it's cool because you can use it with. We're eventually going to talk about Ral Zarek, the new Ral. That if you have 2 copy spells, you go infinite with him and you kill someone. So you can play this and another copy spell to go infinite. I also think just like. There are times where this is better than Remand. Like, there are spells when my opponent casts them that I'd much rather copy than draw a random card. And sometimes you'll, like, really get someone.
I love the idea of remanding your Cryptic Command and stealing it.
Yeah.
That sounds
It's
sweet.
like, this is the best counter wars card I think ever printed. Yeah. Because you get to, like, counter their spell and get your card back. I think this card's, like, just playable. I think it's good. It's a cool design space.
All I'm wondering is, does this have the ability to just like in a counter war just counter their counter, or do you have to like give them their counter back?
No, I think you can count. You counter your counter, or you counter your original spell.
Oh, you just bounce yours, but they still get theirs though. I don't know. That's interesting.
No. Say I counter your spell.
Yeah.
And then you counter my counter spell. I can return my counter spell back and then counter the original spell, for sure.
Oh, gotcha. You get your counter back, but then the copy counters their counter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The word counter was used a lot. That's why counter wars are kind of a nightmare. Narset, Parter of Veils, 1 blue, legendary planeswalker. Narset, each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's a 5 mana planeswalker, comes down on 3 mana, -2 is its ability, so it gets to do its card draw thing twice and then sit in play, preventing your opponent from drawing additional cards. That first ability is the main thing here. If you have any type of wheel effect or windfall effect or anything in that world, you erase your opponent's hand.
Well, yeah, but also, I mean, this card is sweet because think about that. They can't cast Serum Visions.
Yeah.
Outright.
Yeah.
They just can't cast a cantrip.
Yep.
They will draw during their draw step, and anything else that they try to draw during your turn won't work.
Right.
That's pretty good.
Well, I mean, like, there's a reason that Leovold has been, like, as powerful it has been in internal formats, and mostly it's because it stops cantrips, it stops Faithless Looting. In fact, Faithless Looting is terrible against this card because they still have to discard the 2 cards.
Like this card against.
And then when you untap, if you're playing with any of the wheel effects in the format or anything that makes it so your opponent draws cards and discards cards, they become insane because you draw. Like, say you play Whispering Madness, which is Windfall for 4 with the whatever, and you will discard your hand. Your opponent will discard their hand. You will draw whatever cards you draw, 4 cards, and your opponent will not.
I think that this card against Phoenix is pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it's really good against Arclight Phoenix X.
Because they will have a really hard time getting their Phoenixes into play.
Yep.
Because they will be able to discard them. I guess that's not true. They would just play Faithless Looting and just discard Phoenixes.
Yeah, but then they don't. Like, getting additional spells to be able to cast them is what the issue is. Like, the Arclight Phoenix is a deck that wants as many spells as possible. It's one of the reasons the new Mulligan rule is kind of worse for them.
Yeah.
Because they don't want a Mulligan. They don't need the Mulligan because all their cards are good. Because they're all just cantrips, right? Like,
and I mean, I like the card draw ability on this.
That's the last card for today.
That's going to wrap us up. So we have 1/3 of the show left.
Yep.
Which we are going to come out with next week.
Yep.
When that is actually releasing, I don't know, but we're going to find out.
Yeah. Well, likely that'll be the rest of the set, maybe, and our Pro Tour analysis. And depending on what the Pro Tour looks like, it might be a week after that. So there is a to be continued 3rd set review. There's still some of the best cards in the set. There's a lot.
There's some sweet cards that I still want to talk about. Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us for such a long and winding set review. The 3rd part is coming soon.
It's just impressive how good the set is. Like, that's kind of the main thing here is the fact that we need to do 3 episodes. This is the most we've had to do for an episode ever because, and this is back in the day when we used to review every card. Like, there's just so many good cards and talkable cards in this set. Yeah. We haven't gone to Ugin yet. We haven't gone into the fact that there's a Armageddon combo now in Modern. There's a lot to talk about. My least favorite card, Tomic, Distinguished Advocist, the anti-
Oh, yeah, that card's... we got
Life from the Loam card. So much to talk about. See you guys next week on the episode, and thanks so much.
And yeah, just last thing, because we didn't shout it out this episode. It means a lot. Please check out patreon.com/theMMcast. It's the way we finance the show. We pay for a producer, we buy new stuff. So please, guys, thank you so much, and go patreon.com/theMMcast.
And congratulations to Tass Afras. You hope you enjoy all your Gideons.
Yeah, gaggle of Gideons. We'll send those out to you. Be sure to get in touch with us so we know where to send them. Bye, guys.
Bye.